Yes, brilliant. Welcome, everybody. Good to be in person instead of a virtual meeting. I'm chairing this. I'm Councillor Sof McVeigh. And welcome, everybody. So before us today, we have an application for a variation of a premises licence for 126 to 128 Notting Hill Gate at W11, and I just want to declare I have no interest in this, and although I do know the area quite well, I live quite nearby. And joining me on the committee today, I'll let them introduce themselves, if you could make any declarations of interest as well. Thank you.
I'm Councillor Malcolm Spalding. I'm Councillor for the Earls Court Ward, and I have no declarations of interest.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Sarah Addenbrooke and I represent Abingdon Ward, and I have no declarations of interest.
Thank you. And officers?
Thank you, Madam. Officers have no declarations of interest. And I'm Heidi Titcombe.
And we also have with us today, we have our licensing governance team, and we have our licensing officers. And I'll just run through the procedure. So we'll have the applicant will be able to put their case for 10 minutes, and then the committee and the other parties can ask them questions. And then we have the objectors here today who can then present their case, and likewise the committee and the applicant can ask them questions. And we will then turn to our legal officer to see if any questions have been raised and our licensing. Apologies, actually before we go to the applicant's case, we're going to have Mr. Phelan to outline the case before us. And just to let everyone know, it is being streamed live, so just bear that in mind. And everyone should have all the additional papers. Can I just confirm that you've got the papers? Got the papers. Perfect. So I think we're good to go. Mr. Phelan, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Today's application is made by the Stage Bar Group Limited for the variation of a premises licence at 126 to 128 Notting Hill Gate. The application before you today seeks to vary the layout of the premises in accordance with the submitted plans, extend the permitted hours for on-sales of alcohol and late-night refreshment until midnight, Monday to Sunday, add live music to the premises licence, to vary Condition 7 to reflect these revised hours, and to delete and replace Condition 10 so as to require substantial food to be available at all times. The applicant has, as part of their variation, proposed several steps to promote the licensing objectives. A list of these proposed steps can be found on pages 2 to 4 of today's report. I can confirm that this application did not attract a representation from the responsible authorities. The licensing team has received a total of 9 valid representations which oppose this application. This includes 3 representations from residents' associations, namely the Ladbroke Association, the Bulmer Mews Residents Association, and the Pembridge Association. A summary of these representations can be found on pages 4 to 7, with copies attached at Appendix D on pages 31 to 48 of the main bundle. Council records indicate that the premises has received 1 complaint over the preceding 24-month period. A summary of this complaint can be found at Appendix E, page 49. I can also confirm that no temporary event notices have been submitted within the past 24 months. That concludes a summary of this application. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's very clear. Thank you. So now we're moving on to the applicant's case. You have up to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. In attendance, we've heard it's Siobhan McGill is to my left. She is the owner and director of the premises, been in the business for 40 years and owns 3 premises in Soho and 1 in Clapham. None of her premises have attracted residential complaints and action by the authorities. To my right is Michael Bell, who is the operations manager at the premises. The variations have been explained and they're sought having regard to the viability of the business, the location and of course the licensing objectives and the council's statement of licensing policy. We'll come to the conditions later, which we say are a vast improvement as to the existing licence and provide substantial protection to the local residents. My client's got the utmost respect for conditions and compliance. She knows the importance of working with neighbours and authorities and has sympathy to the concerns raised and has tried to address these in amended conditions. This is also reflected in the letters of support, one in particular from a resident in Northcote Road. Indeed, prior to carrying out any works, she met with the Environmental Health Keith Mahaffey officer and again engaged an acoustician and liaised about noise escape. And this is shown by the lack of objection from Environmental Health to any aspect of the variation. Now, she's acquired the premises, she gutted it and rebuilt it with acoustic works in place. She sound blocked all the walls, changed the front windows. Is that working? Yes. Changed the frontage of the premises, so there's now no openable windows at the premises, and introduced a noise lobby at the premises, which you'll see from the plans. There is only one entrance to the premises for the patrons. There's a helpful photo in the supplementary material from one of the residents showing the building and the location. Is this... Is that better? Yep. Fantastic. There's a helpful photo in the supplementary material from one of the residents showing the building and the location, and if you look at that photo, you'll see there's 2 floors. The first 2 floors of the building is commercial. That's the ground and first floor, and then there's 4 floors of residence above, and each flat is a duplex over 2 floors in Ivy Lodge. So what we have at our premises is an interim floor, the first floor, which is all back of house, no trading space, and this will act as a further buffer, not that we think that we'll need it from the acoustic advice we've received. The area, just briefly, it's a busy area. Up the front is the A402, sees a lot of traffic. There's night and day bus routes, busy commercial area. Supermarkets are along the strip, Tesco's and Marks and Spencer's to 11 p.m. There's a large pedestrian thoroughfare as well, 6.6 metres wide to accommodate everything. Should this variation be granted, there were comments made in the representations that would be the latest hours. Obviously, there's a helpful chart which shows the terminal hour. We've got McDonald's, Itsu, Coronet, Pizza Express, Ruby Hotel, the Little Yellow Door, all through to midnight or later, plus the Gate Cinema opposite to 3 a.m. This is a high street and there's movement outside, and what we want is to apply for a level playing field in the area. We haven't applied for later hours in the bulk of the nearby premises. Now, the premises used to be a restaurant previously, but before that it was all bar one. Not aware of any complaints in either of the guys, apart from the one in the report when my client, just keep doing that, before my client took occupation of the premises. Put yours on. Get a bit closer. Is that better? Nope. That's better. So essentially 3 aspects to what this variation is. The first one is to amend the plans of the premises, and then we could have done this under a minor variation. It's just not working. I'm just going to move over. There's no objections to this, I understand. Submissions deal with the changes to the layout and the operation, and as I said, the trading space is ground floor only with first floor back of house. The Act will be a high-profile addition to the area with fit-out of about £1 million in terms of that. Secondly, quickly dealing with the variation of recorded music and the addition of live music, we can provide recorded music on an unrestricted basis already under the licence, so we're not seeking any changes there, and we can provide live music already through to 11 p.m. under the Live Music Act. So then the addition of the 1 hour of the live music linked with the extension of hours, the question is whether or not there'll be noise disturbance. There have been some proposed conditions circulated from the legal officer, conditions 36 and 37, and we would ask that they're not imposed, as they do destroy the concept of what this premises is. We will have things like singers that could be multiple, more than 2, or we might have carol services, things like that. And we say those conditions are not necessary because the acoustic report, the acoustic works that have been undertaken, the fact that there's no openable windows at the premises. In fact, my clients, just to ensure that there's no noise complaints, they've they've ordered another acoustic report to be carried out on Monday to test the integrity with the new shopfront windows in place. So they are taking things very seriously. We've also got no doors open at the rear and no environmental health objection dealing with the concerns of noise escape. And the conditions state that we cannot cause a nuisance to residents, which is very powerful. And we're confident the operation will not be problematic, and we can't see any evidence that there will be issues, but these conditions, should they be imposed, really impinge on the basis of what this operation will be. Thirdly, the main point is the hours and, a result, the proposed conditions. There's no EH or police objections to the variation on hours, so no noise concerns and no crime and disorder concerns from their perspectives, no issues of drunkenness or antisocial behaviour. Now, we have the objections which have been received in the papers. We note there's no objections from Camden Towers next door. I'm not sure, from reading the objections, most of the objectors, I believe, are behind the premises in Bulmer Mews. The objectors actually say that they're behind the premises. I may stand corrected on that, but I'm not aware of any immediately above from reading the representations. Just in terms of some key points that have been raised by residents, the rear of the premises, Bulmer Court, fully accept the concerns of the residents, and we are aware of the complaints from speaking with the building managers. We have added numerous conditions restricting access and also training and notes in the employment contract just to reinforce how serious my client is about the enforcement of such conditions. But I can confirm there'll be no patrons permitted out the back in any event, unless in emergency when evacuating the building. We've even installed the acoustic fire doors at the premises and the surrounds around the fire doors to ensure that there's no leakage from the old doors that were in place. The residents won't be disturbed of any activity at the rear, as nothing's happening there in the later hours, subject to the variation as per the proposed conditions. All hours for deliveries will be done according with the permitted hours. I put in the pack the signage at the rear of the premises. In terms of the outside area in Bulmer Court, condition 28, we've got no objection subject to the correction of the hours, which Joanna from the Bulmer Court Residents Association raised, but just clarification that staff, and I don't think this is a conflict because of condition 39, but in terms of staff putting out the rubbish in the bins immediately outside the premises, there's no restriction, or there is a restriction on Sundays, but that's dealt with in the proposed condition 39, which we agree with. We also do have 2 parking spaces out the rear, and we would allow access, which would be the immediate access and egress, so that the 2 staff members, that car park would be used by the 2 clients sitting beside me, senior management. Otherwise they'd have to go completely around the block. So moving to the front of the premises, the smoking area, we're obliged to provide it and to monitor it. Whether or not tables or chairs are out the front, it will be immediately out the front of the premises, so it can be monitored by the staff, and that will be whether or not there's tables or chairs there. Smokers won't be able to loiter. We've limited the number of smokers after a time, and they won't be able to loiter out the front of Ivy Lodge, which was a concern raised in some representations. We know the building manager, and we've set standards in relation to that. There is an additional condition in terms of having a smoking policy to reinforce everything that I've said, and I can read that out at the end in terms of a smoking policy condition. In terms of dispersal policy, a copy is in the pack. It is robust and thorough. It's a live document, will be amended, and we're very happy to include, in addition to that condition, that any amendments to the dispersal policy will be shared with the residents' associations so that they know exactly what the position is. Tables and chairs are subject to different permissions, as you know. That's being processed now. There's a committee hearing next week. You can't determine that, obviously, but no issue with the amended conditions circulated by the legal officer dealing with the 9:30 p.m. terminal hour. And I just want to say that it's not a new permission that we're seeking in terms of the tables and chairs. Yes, the premises has been closed for 18 months due to COVID, but the premises has had tables and chairs out the front for 20-odd years. So it is an existing permission in that sense. Deliveries, we're not doing takeaways, we're not doing Deliveroo or anything like that. Very happy with condition 34 proposed, and off sales would be limited to the tables and chairs out the front. Rubbish, again, proposed condition 39 can be agreed, but we can actually go further and amend the terminal hour to 8 p.m. rather than 11 p.m. We're very satisfied that we can do that, and that's what we've agreed with the building manager. In terms of door staff, we've conditioned that from 8 p.m. Thursday to Saturday. On the other nights, we have our outside management plan, and staff will monitor the front and ensure no nuisance. We may have door staff on other nights, but we would ask the committee to give us some flexibility and allow us to risk assess that. In any event, I confirm that patrons won't be left to their own devices and will be monitored. I have got an additional wording. I don't know if you want me to say that now. I can go through it in the conditions. Proposal that one additional security for extra 50 people is not agreed. As I said, we would ask the flexibility to have the risk assessment for us to be able to monitor that. It's sort of going into nightclub territory, and it's certainly not how this premises will operate. The additional wording could be additional security shall be risk assessed by the venue, and a copy of such risk assessment shall be held at the premises and made available immediately upon request of police or authorised officer. In terms of compliance, we've got training conditions, no objection, and as I've said, and it's in the papers, there's an employment contract terms as well. And certainly the condition dealing with residents association meetings, very happy to engage the local residents. We've done that as far as we can so far with the authorities, etc., and we're very happy to have that. Just briefly, there's an additional material dealt with in terms of the Archer Street premises. On that footage, and I'd just make a couple of comments. The footage is from Archer Street. I'm told that it was taken in October. We don't know the time or date, but there's different partners involved in that. The location is completely different. There's no residential accommodation and certainly no complaints. It's got later hours, that licence, and the clientele's different, and there's no restrictions in terms of outside activities, but still there's no complaint history for that premises. Obviously, members will want to make sure that the conditions reflect public nuisance licensing objectives. We appreciate there's a balance that we need to get right, and we have sought to do this with the amended conditions that will satisfy everyone. I appreciate not everything that the applicants offered is 100% what the residents seek, but it is ensure a vast improvement in terms of having an 11 p.m. licence with very few conditions with protection to residents, and should this variation be granted, it is a huge benefit to crystallise the trade in many ways that the licence does not do so now. We're not located in a cumulative impact area, and the licensing regime is permissive unless there's good reasons to restrict the licence. I have dealt with conditions somewhat through my presentation, but I'm happy, if need be, to go through the conditions specifically at a convenient time for members.
Thank you very much. That was very thorough. Yes, lots of conditions there. Race through that, and I know that Ms Titcombe will definitely ask more about that later on. We're going to kick off with a few questions, first of all, from the committee. I don't know, Councillor Spalding, do you want to?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got two themes of questions. The first theme is looking at the promotion of the licensing objectives in your application. Under D, the prevention of public nuisance, which is likely to be noise nuisance because of the live and amplified music, and you went to great lengths to talk about how you were going to mitigate that. You didn't put anything under D in your application.
I think
But you've made a lot of it in your submission.
This is page 27 of the main pack.
Yeah. It's in your original application.
I think that was because, it may just be, in terms of D, there are proposed conditions that I've initially done through there, and I think it was more a situation of a number of sort of the other conditions dealt with nuisance as well, but I hate to say this, the online web form couldn't expand and things like that, so it was put in as maximum as what I could on the public nuisance licensing objective box.
To pursue that then, a couple of technical questions about your acoustic report.
Absolutely.
I'm sort of basing it on the plan that you provided, which is towards the end of the RBA acoustics report.
Yes. You might be able to answer that.
Going back 4 pages before that to 4.0, testing and results.
Yes.
You talked about putting in acoustic insulation, and I know that on the first floor you've got kitchens and toilets. So the question is, in the results it says, if you looked at the flat 3 bedroom front, I'm not sure where that is, you say there's only a reduction of 39 decibels from the largest music of 105 decibels. This is in the blue table towards the bottom. So this is the worst case figures at 63 hertz, which is a sort of bass, reverberant, low frequency sound, which travels. You've only got a reduction of 39, so that gives 66 decibels in a bedroom, which is getting on towards the noise of a spin dryer or a washing machine. And are you sure you're presenting that as the noise you think is acceptable in somebody's bedroom?
That was the measured level differences prior to any works being carried out. So
Right.
this report was prepared prior to the strip out and everything. So we went up and we did measurements prior to that. We have since adopted all the recommendations within the report, sound blocked the walls, there's pillars in the middle, we've sound blocked around those. And as I said, we're now having a second acoustic test done on Monday from the same firm, because we've changed the street frontage. There was openable windows and now there's not. To deal with that, to further contain noise. So there's a further acoustic report, but certainly these were the measured differences at the time. Before
Any
the,
insulation to the ceilings?
yes.
Yep.
Can I pass you over to Michael, because he's been
Michael.
dealing with...
We, whilst refurbing, we've actually lowered the ceilings
Yep.
to enable a bigger void to ensure that there is no nuisance, and that's at the trading level. The kitchen level has remained, so there was increased buffer.
Are there any loudspeakers in the toilets or in
No,
the
there
kitchen?
is no speakers on the first floor at all.
Thank you. That's good. Second question then is just looking at, again, the front doors and the rear doors to Bulmer Mews. I don't think the front door is so sensitive for noise going out when the doors are open, but I noticed there's only one set of double doors at the front. You're not proposing to put a kind of inner door?
There's only there is one entrance to the premises, and and during their works they've created 2 doors, so there is a sound lobby going into and out of the premises by
So
patrons.
there is double doors at the front?
Yes.
Which is not shown on the plan?
I
Okay,
think
but
this is the acoustic plan. If you go to the licensing proposed plan, the acoustic lobby is shown.
Thank you. At the back then, Bulmer Mews, which is probably more sensitive for sound than the front, it looks to me the DJ stations are near the back doors, and you've got
That's changed.
a fire exit at the back. It looks like you've got triple doors there, is that right, or is it just double?
It's just the back is just doubles. But there is a sound lobby as well. So there's one fire door which is internal to the building, and then a second that leads onto Bulmer Mews. But the location of the DJ booth has since, from that plan, been moved.
This plan was used for the acoustic report, so if you look at again the licensing plan that's proposed, the DJ booth is away from the back door and opposite the premises at the bar area. So it's slightly changed there, because these were just proposed plans carried out before we'd lodged the licensing application and before any works had been carried out.
Page 30 on the main pack, I think.
Yes.
Yep.
That one in the main pack, Chairman, is not very clear to read, the ground floor plan, but I take it that what you said is correct, which you've... Do you think after the acoustic report has been done next week,
Monday.
Monday, are you going to do testing at the door areas as well as in the residential above?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Addenbrooke?
So a couple of questions, just on the acoustics again. I just wonder if you could elaborate a bit on what performances are going to be, live performances they're going to be. You talk about West End performers with a DJ and backing tracks for the singers.
I'll pass that on to Siobhan.
Hi. The floor staff that will serve tables, basically they're from West End or waiting to go into the West End. They're professional singers. So they will impromptu, from time to time, get up and perform with backing tracks. So they'll sing the performance. Early evening, it'll be a little bit, let's say, an extract from Moulin Rouge or one of the musicals, and they'll do a bit of performance.
Thank you. I mean, I've got a son who's a DJ, and I know how noisy some of these things can be. So I think there is a concern about noise coming from the DJ aspect as well.
I can understand that. I wholly understand that.
So I just wondered, you know, I appreciate that music, the regulations, but could we look at perhaps having a sound limiter?
Said that, you know, I think if it's a problem, yes, but I don't believe it's going to be a problem. I really don't. But, you know, if it means we do, you know, we never reached the one in Soho. We never reached that limit, ever. We've got one there. We've never had any complaints from the residents above or across the road. You know, yeah, the concept is, and it allows for a high-end clientele. I don't say high-end, but totally different. You know, it's over 25-year-olds. Our average age, we're looking at 35, that we would expect to be responsible and considerate and respectful towards the neighbours. In fact, we're going to put that on our website, that we won't take any tolerance to any antisocial behaviour outside the premises, and we're going to have it, as you go into the website, respect our neighbours. I'm very much an advocate of, if I can't live in it, I don't expect anybody else to. If I was living around, I wouldn't like it, and I'd be the first to complain. So I'm very conscious of other people's feelings.
Okay, thank you. And actually, on that point on resident engagement, I mean, I know you've been engaging with Ivy Lodge, but there was nothing from Camden Hill Towers at all, whose entrance is literally, I think it's one shop front along.
Yes. Well, I did speak to a lot of the residents in Camden Hill Towers and explained to them who we were, what we were, and a lot of them had come to me and asked, you know, if I met them on the street, they would ask what I was doing. And there's one or two that are actually in the industry, they're performing artists. And I told them what I was doing, how it would run, and they all seemed to be quite happy about it. And you know, at the time, I gave them my number and said, you know, my number will always be displayed. If they've any problems, all they've got to do is just call.
Okay. And I think that what's obvious from the documents that we've got is that obviously Bulmer Mews are very badly affected.
Listen, I would be concerned myself. I've been outside there with all the trucks, and I feel sorry for the people because it's obviously the hotel being built, and then you've got the supermarkets at the back. I personally, if I were there, I'd tell them to turn off their engines, and I would say to the supermarkets to clear up the rubbish on the ground. But I will get very involved in keeping Bulmer Mews a quiet place because it's directly opposite people's, I'm sure, bedrooms, and I do understand everybody's concerns in Bulmer Mews. I really do, but I'll assure you that we will not be a cause of a nuisance to those people that live behind. I think it's outrageous at the moment, but it's, you know, there's another year to go before the hotel is finished, and then one would expect it'll all quieten down, but it is very, very busy.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think there's a condition that we can talk about later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are good questions, and it's good to hear more about how you operate. And just a question about your years of experience in the business. I didn't catch what Ms. Tricker said.
I've been in the industry for about 40 years. It's all I've ever been in.
Okay.
I started off with the pheasantry on the King's Road many years ago. and since then in Leicester Square and then in Soho. I worked with somebody for 32 years of that, and then I started up my own business in 2008, mainly in Soho.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. We'd like experienced operators.
Yeah, I've never had problems.
But going back to the Bournemouth Mews thing, I'm sure that the residents will have a question about that, but just specifically about the use of the back entrance. And obviously it's conditioned that no customers are allowed out the back there, but I know in the past it's come up other places having staff smoking at the back or delivery. So what are you proposing for that?
Exactly the same in Northcote Road, and initially we did have a problem, and the neighbour came to speak to me about it, and we stopped it straight away. He actually gave a letter of support, and no staff are allowed outside after 8 o'clock. It's in their contract, their employment contract. If they do go outside the back to smoke, they will be instantly dismissed. So they have an area where they're allowed to smoke outside the front.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And you mentioned dispersal policy. I've just been looking through the papers. I can't see one, but I believe we've got that as a condition. If
the applicant right at the back, I understand, after the RBA report. There's a noise management plan, the last 3 pages.
Great, thank you. I think no more questions from us. Thank you for that. And I'm going to turn to the objectors. If you have any questions, you will in a moment have a chance to do your submission. So just questions at this moment. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joanna Gardner from Bournemouth Mews. I also have Steve Miller from Ivy Lodge here and Sophia Lambert from the Ladbroke Association. My question is the capacity, please.
The capacity is around 220. No difference to when it was all bar one or Polpo. It's under the fire risk assessment.
Okay, and what capacity are you expecting to operate at?
220. Well, hopefully.
220. And what are your busiest times of day?
We don't know yet until we... Sorry. We don't really know yet because of the, the change from what it used to be. It's very difficult. Like years ago, I used to attend all bar one. I could only judge by that, but you're going back 10 years. It appears Notting Hill has changed recently, so it's very difficult to say. But I would have thought it'd be more family orientated and people that live around. So I would have thought the busiest time would be 7 o'clock. Starting at 7, 8 maybe being the peak.
So can I understand, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with Challenge 25, but how does, aren't you saying that you actually are only allowing people over 25 in?
Pardon?
Sorry, I don't really understand the concept of Challenge 25, given what you've just said. Are you looking for a family audience, in which case children, or are you only looking for over 25s?
No, it'd be over 25 in the evening, but I would expect, because it's a neighbourhood place, during the day, and only because I know some people that live around and they might go out with their children, I say children, 13, 14-year-olds, and they would go, rather than go to Pete's Express across the road, they might want to...
Excuse me, I'm just going to jump in here because I don't think actually that's quite the answer to the question. Ms. Titson's just going to explain. Challenge 25 means 18-year-olds can still come, but if they look under 25, the licensing provider has to challenge and see their ID. But I'm just going to get that confirmed.
Sorry, there's a Challenge 25 in the list of conditions.
Yes.
That wasn't a condition that the applicants had offered. I have put in a number of conditions that the committee may or may not be minded to attach. So it wasn't a condition suggested by the applicants, and it's a matter that I will discuss with the applicants when we talk about the conditions. So at the moment they haven't offered it, but as the chair has said, that doesn't mean that children can't go. It just means that if someone orders some alcohol, they would then ask them for verification if they look under 25.
Thank you. I think I was trying to understand the comment that they were seeking high-end clientele over 25, and preferably 35. So I was trying to understand where the family sat within that. Thank you. And then just a couple of points of clarification. The rubbish, are you proposing to put the rubbish out the rear? And if so, during which hours? Because I got really confused about the condition where you talk about immediate egress and exit and, at the rear doors.
So the rubbish, we will put rubbish out note up until 8 p.m. and that will be it. At that point, it will stop. We will keep the rubbish inside the premises until the following day, and it will be taken out around 10 a.m. the following day. So after 8 p.m, there will be no rubbish put out to the back, and no staff will be using that for any other reason than in case of emergency.
Okay, and can I just clarify, because the service road hours stop at 6:30 on a Saturday night?
That's a service, that's service road for deliveries.
Well, this is what I'm trying to clarify, because actually the noise on a Saturday night is delightful, because it all cuts down. So I'm trying to understand as to whether you have the ability on a Saturday night to accommodate your rubbish inside from 6:30 rather than from 8.
Of course, we can.
Okay, thank you.
We can agree that for a Saturday.
Right, and actually, same for a Sunday, because at the moment everything stops at 12 on a Sunday.
We can do 6:30.
My neighbour will tell me off that I'm not stopping at 12 on a Sunday. And then just one other point about the immediate access and egress at the rear. At the moment, that is a wide open door, the way it's drafted. It isn't relating to two staff members coming in and out for car parking. I don't have an issue with people coming in and out for 2 car parking spaces. I do have an issue with the doors banging if that was constantly used as a in and out route. Okay, so if we could just have that clarified. I have no further questions, thank you.
Yes, I just have one question. First of all, the Labrook Association covers the area immediately behind the premises, but because our residents are affected and Notting Hill Gate is their main shopping street, we regard ourselves as having a locus in this matter on behalf of our residents.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry?
Could you speak into the microphone?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, as regards, my question regards condition 24, which we generally welcome. The external doors and windows, as amended, we welcome it, shall be kept closed except until the... I'll turn the page. During the performance of any live entertainment or the generation of loud music on the premises. Is there a definition of loud music? Because what some people regard as loud, others may not.
Sorry, this is another... The wording in red on this conditions document are suggested amendments by me. Okay, they're not...
Yes, sorry.
They're not necessarily put forward by Ms Tricker, although she's indicated during her submission that she was accepting some of them. I will clarify which ones.
Yeah.
But it is difficult. You're quite right to determine what's the meaning of loud music. That's just an added protection, but we could remove the word loud because obviously that's open to conjecture as to what it means. So we don't need the word loud. It's a standard condition that you would put on, but I do accept that it does allow for interpretation as to whether something's loud or not.
Yes, that leaves it a bit open to question. I still don't quite see how one deals with this. If somebody if it can be...
It's 24.
Should-
As I said,
should
the
there
way
be a
you can
condition-
deal with it is you can delete the word loud
And simply
music.
all music.
So it just refers to music.
Yeah, no,
but
that would-
obviously that's a matter I will need to
yeah.
discuss with Ms Tricker
Yeah,
to see
no-
whether she thinks that is an appropriate and proportionate condition to add on in any event.
Yeah. Well, obviously we would prefer it to be just music.
I don't know whether you wanted to comment on that.
Certainly, I mean, my first comment in relation to that is, in terms of the windows, we've got no openable windows, so I didn't think the words windows needs to be included, but I've no objection if you do, just as a fail-safe issue in terms of that. I've got no objection to the 9 p.m. Now, the front doors is a sound lobby in terms of the entrance of the premises, so there are outer doors and inner doors to deal with that. I've spoken to my client, and with all the acoustic measures sort of earlier on and the works that we've carried out, what we would prefer in terms of the inner doors being closed at, say, 8 p.m. In terms of Ms Titcombe's comments in terms of the hours during any live entertainment of the premises, because we did want to keep the outer doors able to be open until 9 p.m. just to indicate that we're open and trading and things like that. That does not negate the fact that we've got an overriding condition that we cannot cause nuisance at the premises to any nearby residents. So that is the overwhelming condition in terms of music levels at the premises. Now, you've heard from my client, and she's very confident that the levels of music in terms of a sound limiter, should you impose it, we don't reach those levels once they're set by the acoustician and the council in consultation. So we'd just like to clarify in terms of the inner doors and outer doors what would be closed.
Okay, understood. I think we'll come to that when we get to the conditions, when we go through that, once we've heard more questions. Another question, yes?
Yes, my name's Stephen Miller. I'm a resident in Ivy Lodge. My question relates to the acoustic report. In the report, you document only one premises, and the testing was actually done on several premises, mine included. And would it be possible for you to share that data?
I can't share it now. I didn't engage with the acoustician, so I've only got the acoustic report here.
The reason why only flat 3 was the one included, because that's the one that's directly above and would have the most likelihood of causing nuisance to. So all the other premises that we did test, there was no real findings in there. That was the worst point. So that's directly above the premises.
As I said, we're doing another acoustic test on Monday, and if you'd like us to go into your premises, your house, we'd jump at the chance to do measurements
yes,
there.
that wouldn't be a problem. And the other question I had, I think you've answered it already, was the acoustic consultant. He recommended a number of modifications.
He did.
And you've answered that.
Yes, that they were all carried out.
And then the other question was, are you going to do a follow-up survey?
And very happy I can take your details and we can get
No
access
problem.
to your premises.
Could I just ask, as a follow-up on that, is the acoustic survey being done again on those flat 3? So are you getting access to flat 3? Is that all being organised so that you can redo it the same? But have you already asked and got that organised?
I tried to get them to come in today to do it, and they couldn't. The earliest they could come in would be Monday. I don't have an exact time when they're going to come in, but I would recommend to them that they come in if they've spoken to you since.
So I know flat 2 was very concerned and wanted to be involved and have an assessment because they're right on that level.
Okay.
We can pick that up. We can pick that up tomorrow, and if you're able to email me, Joanne, or any
I suggest
details
you
or
work
flats,
through
or
Steve.
Stephen can, and we can arrange a tee-up time in terms of access. No issue with that at all.
Thank you. So any questions from the legal team right now, or do you want to wait until the conditions at the end? Okay, perfect. So now we're going to move on to the objector's submission, please. You have up to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanna Garden from Bournemouth News. I'd just like to refer you to the photograph. So this is Ivy Lodge, and the residents all live above it. There is an awning over the front which acts as a slight sound baffle. But essentially, the basis of this is that actually none of the residents, including myself, are objecting to the business as such. We welcome the business, and so we're really looking to coexist. Having highlighted the capacity here today, I think that's actually quite a concern of 220 people potentially flowing in and out. And as a result, what we're looking to do is control the hours. Now, along this stretch of Notting Hill Gate, I appreciate we've been quoted Pizza Express, the Little Yellow Bar. Those are all things on the other side of the road. Those are Camden Ward. This is Pembridge Ward. If you actually look at this stretch, we have Itsu. Itsu actually closes at 10 o'clock at night. It may have a late light licence, it doesn't use it. Tesco's has a late light licence. Has a licence until 11 o'clock at night. It closes at 12. McDonald's doesn't have alcohol. It closes at 12. This premises is seeking to close at 12:30. As a result, you are going to get a massive exiting, potentially of 220 people. And I think there will, by its nature, be an impact on the area, and particularly those residents above, because you have the decrease in traffic noise, you have the decrease in footfall, all essentially clicking in really from 11 o'clock at night. And I know Entree, the cafe down there, closes at 8 o'clock. Itsu's outside tables close. So Itsu is closed at 10 o'clock. So please don't fall for this. The documents say everybody's got a later licence. Even the hotel has a licence only until 11 o'clock at night. So I appreciate what the pack says, but actually the residents, when we sat down with Ivy Lodge, have said, really, we just want to try, because it's a brand new concept, we're really worried about the noise, we just want to stick with the status quo. And try it for a year. So that would be my suggestion, is that it's a year's trial at the existing hours. At the very least, it should be, everybody needs to be off the premises by midnight. So major issue is the actual opening hours. A couple of quick questions or points. As the off licence is only needed for the tables and chairs, query whether that can also finish at 9:30. There's also been a question about whether, in fact, the use of the tables and chairs predominantly for patrons should actually be limited or restricted to patrons who have also ordered food in order to keep the noise level down. Because the noise for the residents is above. They are living above. Smoking area, I think we've talked about that. Again, happy to walk through the conditions, but I think when you look at the conditions and the tables and chairs coming in at 9:30, query whether in fact the restriction on smokers to 15 should actually just take effect at that stage, not at 10:30. Door supervisors, I think we've already touched. Happy to walk through the few inconsistencies or page turn on the conditions. The Ladbroke Association have particularly asked whether there are any planters, and if so, can they all be taken in with the tables and chairs? Openable windows, I think it'd be helpful to have that as a condition. The dispersal policy. I do recognise that it's helpful that we are now being shared the dispersal policy, but actually if there are changes, I think residents' associations ought to be involved or consulted on those changes. I don't particularly want to suddenly see that actually all the dispersal policy is changed in the negative to have a negative effect on residents. And then my last point is the adoption of a noise limiter. So I think I have certainly spoken to some environmental health officers who told me, and it's almost Councillor Spalding's point, that actually when you look at the original application, you could miss the fact that there was any live or any DJ or any music. It was only actually from the plans that we could pick this up. And I think the fact that the acoustic report wasn't submitted means that Environmental Health didn't see the acoustic report. Yes, they had met with the applicant on site beforehand, but no, they hadn't seen the acoustic report. Now, what you need to do is make sure that the flats or the premises are well insulated, and we've had that, well, we haven't had a guarantee, but we've effectively had a statement today that those works have all been carried out. I think it would be helpful if whenever the next test is carried out, we can make sure that flat residents are involved, and particularly those right above the premises, and that should be delayed if they can't attend those premises. And secondly, that once you've taken the building up to its optimum performance acoustically, you then limit the music levels through a sound limiting device, and I think that's important here, because this whole application is really all about noise. And we wish there were business of success, but actually when 220 patrons all hit the pavement at midnight or midnight 30, those residents above are not going to be happy. I hand over now, thank you. No? Well, there was me running through my 10 minutes, so as not to take the 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So nothing else from others, but I'd like to ask some questions, so thank you. Just to pick up on a point that we can't second guess what the noise and nuisance team think or do not think. The fact is they're not here today, so they haven't done a submission. So
in the fact that the acoustic report was not attached to the original application, they had no comments.
Yeah.
So I have followed it up with them directly.
Fair enough,
Thank
fair
you.
enough. I mean, again, the acoustic reports are not often attached to licensing applications. They look at
If I could just clarify that
Yes.
the acoustic report was indeed shown to Keith Mahaffey. We invited him down to the premises prior to carrying out any works. He was shown the acoustic report. It predated our meeting, and he was very happy. He was aware of the acoustic company that had carried out the work. He'd dealt with them previously, and he was very satisfied and happy that we'd done that. I think he even made the comment that not many applicants would actually have an acoustic report carried out prior to seeing him, and he would usually make that recommendation. So certainly he has seen the acoustic report.
I was surprised you didn't mention it in your application. I think Councillor
It is
Spaulding made
mentioned
the
in
point
the
earlier.
submissions.
In the addition,
Yes.
in the additional information which
Yes.
came through, last week?
Yes.
As Councillor Spaulding spoke, I was surprised it didn't come through in the original application. I mean, why wouldn't you have shown that you'd taken all these steps?
I apologise for that.
Yeah, I mean,
if
it's
you're
helpful
to deal with
the
that.
neighbours and everything. you know.
Submitting an acoustic report in terms of licensing applications is not something that I'd usually do at first instance to deal with that, and certainly the measures that were taken was in terms of engagement with the licensing authority, and that's shown by the absence of the environmental health objection to the application. But it has all been carried out, and it has been discussion to deal with that.
But again, I don't think you made...
Ms.
Yeah,
Garnett, sorry,
Indeed.
we're asking you questions at this
Correct.
stage. Thank you for clarifying that. That is very helpful. I would just like to ask, as you say, everything's about noise. I completely agree. Most licensing hearings we have is all about noise. There are two different aspects of the noise here. The noise, the internal reverberations up to the premises above, and then the external ones regarding dispersal. And that is all down to the management, which I think is absolutely crucial. I think your point about the dispersal plan is essential, and maybe we can request that if there's any change to that if the committee were minded to grant, that does get shown to the residents as well. The point about the outside tables and chairs, just to clarify, planters are not the remit of this committee. That comes under the tables and chairs committee or the planning committee, so that's not what we're looking at here. So that would be under a different committee. So my question to you again, I suppose, is...
So, Chair, could I just come back on planters, just very briefly? We accept it's not the remit of this committee, but I think it may be in the question of whether they should be brought in at night. And we would like to see a condition that not just the tables and chairs, but any other street furniture should all be brought in at night.
Normally that would be controlled by the planning application, which I think is going to committee next Tuesday, isn't it? Planning committee. So, I mean, Ms Tricker, did you have any comment whether it's possible to put those planters back or beside the windows as opposed to away from the building?
We have no objection to moving them towards the building line and touching the building line to deal with that, and I understand from the committee report, I'm not making the application for the tables and chairs and planning, but I understand that's a proposed condition in the report.
So is that something that you would be prepared as an add-on in the licence or not? Or you say...
We have no objection, that's what our intention that we'll do, so we have no problem with putting that as a condition.
You've been going back to the building line?
To the building line, the front of the premises.
Well,
It's a matter for the committee to decide whether they want to attach that condition, because it's always whether it's appropriate and proportionate, but it's helpful to know what your view is.
Yeah, it's just a logistical because they're heavy to take them into the premises whilst it's trading to deal with that. But they certainly won't be an obstruction on the pavement that's extremely wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll leave it to the planning committee. It's just that I'm always a bit concerned when the planning committee imposes one set of conditions and then there's something slightly different on the part of licensing. I don't think that's really good administration, although I recognise the silos prevent you from coordinating.
Yes, the different acts is challenging, and now we have the Business and Planning Act as well, which actually does simplify things a bit in terms of the outside pavement licences. But I suppose moving planters could also create more noise, so that's something to bear in mind. I mean, we as a borough are trying to encourage more planters for greenery and biodiversity and absorbing pollution, so there's always the balance. But that I feel we're straying off the licensing committee remit here, so I'm going to stop that right now. And just go back to smokers, if I may. So I understand objectors' concern about the number of smokers. 15, I think, has been mentioned. So my question to you is,
I think
less number?
The 15 is after 23:30 hours, so it's actually not restricted before then. And so there's the question of A, should it be, and B, is 15 too high, and C, what's the timeline?
Applicants, do you mind just answering that about the smokers?
Certainly, the number proposed was 15 people, I think after 10:30 p.m. We're happy to bring that forward to 10 o'clock in terms of the restriction. We will have a smoking policy, and I've got a suggested condition for the smoking policy, which I can review at a later time when the conditions are discussed.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that would be helpful.
Could I just clarify that so the tables and chairs are coming in at 9:30?
The tables and chairs, there has not been agreed on yet. I mean, in previous speaking as chairing some tables and chairs licences, we often say last service at 9:30 and all customers and all tables to be cleared by 10 is the kind of the current across borough tables and chairs licence. So that's, again, slightly separate committee, but...
Sorry, I mean, I forgive me, I would have made more of an issue of the tables and chairs, but Lana and I have exchanged emails on the subject, and also given in mind the planning committee, who's recommending 9:30 for the tables, that Lana and I thought had agreed 9:30 for the tables and chairs to come in, and Sunday at 9 o'clock. If that's wrong, then I would like to talk about them big time.
Just to clarify, I think the 9:30 for the tables and chairs and 9 on a Sunday is the application before the planning committee. So it would make sense for the hours to be the same in terms of the licence. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask when it comes to conditions. So perhaps you could just give that some thought.
So I think what I was trying to do was tie smoking to the tables and chairs.
I think that makes sense. The clearer the better. I mean, we've all got to remember when every condition is put on, you know, they're legally binding, as we want as much clarity as possible. And again, in terms of, we've talked about the noise within the premises, but the noise outside the premises, the dispersal plan, and the flats above. I mean, they installation-wise, are there double glazing on the flats? Is it?
I think each flat is different. Some of them have been refurbished the flat where I'm in, 18, it was refurbished 4 years ago. So it's got extra large double glazing on. So, it does combat road noise. But I'm not sure about, I think it's flat 2 or 3, I don't know.
They're the most impacted, and I understand that. But of course, noise does travel upwards and along. Okay, thanks. No questions for me, fellow committee members?
Thank you, Chairman. Mrs. Everett, you were worried about 220 people leaving all at once. I'm not sure where this number of 220 has come from, because I can't see anywhere a maximum capacity has been conditioned anywhere. I can see on the acoustic report, which has got seating in it, I know that's been superseded, but that has seating for 90 people with 20 outside on the forecourt. On the diagram that's in the main pack, it's impossible to see what the layout is inside. And I don't see any conditions here about whether people have to be seated, whether people are standing. I don't know what the model is to operate the internal space. And it might be that the 220 was the maximum sort of projected number of customers in a day. Or it might be the maximum capacity. I just wondered what you thought would be a reasonable maximum capacity for these premises, and whether that, I think that might be more of a planning issue than for us, but I'm just wondering if you've got something in mind as a maximum.
I think Ms. Tipscombe's going to just jump in here.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of capacity, my understanding is no capacity condition has been offered, and capacity is normally dealt with by the fire authority. Sometimes environmental health do suggest a capacity condition. However, in this case, environmental health have not made a representation, so there's no condition. So there's no evidence for the committee as to what is a reasonable capacity for these premises. So I think you're more in the applicant's hands as to whether they want to put a capacity on, but at the moment we've got no evidence of what would be appropriate, and the residents or nobody else really are in a position to confirm what's the best capacity, because it's not something within their expertise, unfortunately.
So just in answer to Councillor Spaulding's question, I asked the applicants in the Q&A session what was the capacity, and they said 220 based on their fire assessment. And when I asked what capacity were they expecting to operate at, they said full capacity of 220. That's what my comment was based on.
Can you just clarify the 220? Does that include the tables and chairs outside, or is that just inside? Okay.
Based on the fire risk assessment for the premises, which is how we operate under.
And staff as well.
Some guidance on this, because I've often seen conditions about alcohol should only be served to patrons who are seated, and sometimes only patrons who are seated and taking a meal, and sometimes we allow vertical drinking at the bar or throughout the whole premises. And I haven't seen any reference to this in any of the papers.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Spaulding. So you're quite right. It's common to put a condition on that when you're dealing with outside areas, that alcohol should be supplied ancillary to a meal, a table meal normally, or food, and that there is often a condition that alcohol also has to be served to seated people. That hasn't been suggested by the applicants, but that was one of the questions I was going to raise. So it's a matter really, we have to ask the applicants to help us with that. If that's something that you as a committee are minded and are thinking about that in view of the representations that have been raised, then you can put that to Ms Tricker and her and the applicants, and we can hear what they say.
Thank you for that guidance.
Committee, any specific questions to the objectors? Questions? No. Applicants, any questions to the objectors, please? No. Any specific questions, Mr. Dickham?
No, just conditions.
No. So now we're going to move on to the conditions stage of the hearing. And please, can everyone bear in mind these are conditions only if the committee is minded to grant, that we have not obviously decided that yet, but we're just talking about conditions because it is quite an old licence. So some of the conditions are not either not relevant or not written in the exact same way as what we would draft them now.
Thank you. So part of the application that has been requested is to remove conditions 7 and 10. And also conditions 8 and 9 are very old grandfather conditions. In light of the conditions which has been proposed by the applicants, I would suggest that conditions 8 and 9 should also be deleted, apart from the fact that we need to retain the ability in condition 7 for the applicants to have alcohol and be permitted to serve alcohol on New Year's Eve up to the beginning of New Year's Day, because that's contained within their condition 7, so that can be carried over. So I wonder if everybody could refer to this conditions schedule. I did note that there have been a few comments overnight from Ms Gardner and Ms Tricker, and I have taken those on board. So just going through the conditions at the moment. So 7, there's no, I'm assuming there's no objection. Ms Tricker, that's fine. Okay, lovely, thank you.
Could I just say, we did ask about the off-licence because it was only needed for the tables and chairs to finish at the same time as the tables and chairs.
Yes, we'll go through that.
Thank you.
A bit further. So condition 11 is the consumption of alcohol, which has been suggested by the applicants. Any objections from residents on that? It's a standard condition. No? Okay. And then the next one is about temporarily leaving. I have altered the condition in red to show... Condition 12, sorry, so that it refers to from, and then I put a time. I was trying to tie up the time with the planning.
Mm-hmm.
Ms Tricker, do you have any comment as to whether it should be 2130 or 2200 hours?
We'll ultimately leave it to members should they decide to grant it. We would prefer the 10 p.m. only because of there's the transition with the tables and chairs, and we didn't want further sort of congestion there. But we'll leave that in the hands of the members.
Okay, thank you very much. The next condition, condition 13, is about the tables and chairs and when they should be removed. I just tidied it up a bit, tweaked it. And Ms Tricker, are you happy with those changes?
Yes.
Is it fine with us? Thank you.
Happy with you? Thank you. They can be removed. If they've offered to remove them, that's fine. Unusable is only when they leave them there. Okay. Condition 14. I've got some queries on this condition. My query is that it refers to that substantial food and non-alcoholic beverages will be available throughout the licensed premises. The reason why I have a query there is that the outside area is not part of the licensed premises, it's part of the highway. So I would suggest removing the words throughout the licensed premises. Is that okay, Ms Tricker?
No objection to that.
Thank you.
So could I just clarify, how do you therefore control alcohol drinking outside? Because one of the concerns for the residents is that it becomes an outside bar and there's hardly any eating, and as a result you get higher noise level outside.
Well, you control it by the conditions. That's the whole purpose.
But you're just saying...
No, this is all about substantial food and alcohol
Yes.
shall be available throughout the premises to patrons who take alcohol.
So arguably it could become outside just a drinking bar by taking out the... No, because substantial food doesn't have to be offered outside.
No, they have to get it from inside, so I think
Sorry, I don't really understand the point, sorry.
But so can I jump in here?
Yes, by all means.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I suppose you're saying, like, outside public houses, people can have a pint, they don't need food. Outside All Bar One, they could have a drink when it was All Bar One, doesn't need to have food. That could be a condition if you want the committee to look at, that if you're sitting outside with alcohol, you need to have food as well. That would be a separate condition to what you're talking about, number 14.
And certainly we did ask for that, yes.
Sorry, can I just clarify? Condition 14 is a redraft by the applicants of their original condition 10 on the licence. So they're just asking for that to be slightly amended. So they've actually made it better rather than worse. So if you look at on page 15 of the committee papers, it says substantial food and non-intoxicants.
Can I just clarify, by taking out the throughout the licensed premises, actually you're broadening it to cover the external tables?
Sorry?
I think actually your deletion of throughout the licensed premises actually works in our favour, so I think it's fine.
It does?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Fine.
thank you. I know it's very confusing when you amend conditions, but that's why it's always crucial to go through them. So then condition 15, I suggested a few amendments, and Ms. Tricker, I think you suggested that you weren't happy with some aspects of that.
Yeah. Yes, so the first sentence as proposed, I've got no objections to your amendment. What we objected to was the wording in the square brackets, and what we suggested as an alternate was additional security shall be risk assessed by the venue, and a copy of such risk assessment shall be held at the premises and made available immediately upon the request of police or authorised officer of the council.
I think you just need to repeat that slightly
Sorry.
slower, because I need to be able to put that into words. So it's additional security shall be risk assessed by the
venue,
yeah.
and a copy of such risk assessment shall be held at the premises and made available immediately upon the request of police or authorised officer.
Thank you. Any other comment from the objectors on that?
I think I was just talking to Steve about it. I think the concern is one door supervisor enough, and certainly between there's no coverage from Sunday to Wednesday, and then if you've got 220 patrons, is one enough? So it's a bit of a weak secondary sort of risk assessment, because they are judge and jury of their own. So it's only if things go wrong that actually you will be looking for the risk assessment. They're not actually under any obligation to put anybody else on because they are judge and jury.
Or just in reply to that, the condition is a minimum of one security, so it will be risk assessed by the venue, which is very common to do depending on the day of the week, the number of patrons within the venue. And in terms of management of the outside area, we have a dispersal and outside management plan. It will never be not monitored by a staff member. There'll be service out to the tables and chairs area as well during the earlier days, and we really do not want to put just the financial implications of a minimum earlier in the week, which potentially could be very quiet, and we would like the opportunity to risk assess that based on the needs, bearing in mind that we've got an obligation to promote the licensing objectives, and I also note the police have not put any representation in terms of concerns with security at the premises.
Yes, so that's a matter for the committee to determine, having heard both of your arguments on it. Thank you. And then next we go to condition 16, which is the CCTV. And I have just suggested...
Yeah, no objection.
Okay, fine, thank you. That is the standard CCTV, so I don't think it should be controversial. 17 I will remove because I've now... it's no longer needed. Thank you. Then in terms of 18, I've just updated the record. Thank you. Number 19, 20, 21 have been suggested by the applicants. Number 22, I just put in all exits.
No objection.
Okay. Number 23, notices about smoking. Number 24 is about the doors of the premises should be kept closed. Now, we've heard from Ms Tricker that the windows are not openable.
I have no objection if you want it there, but
okay,
I don't think there's any need. But
and are you happy with the 2100 hours?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's the external doors from 9, that's what we offered. Yep.
And the last bit of that condition, you mentioned that the inner doors...
Hang on a minute. Ms Gardner?
Sorry, I haven't finished the condition.
No, she wanted to say something about that last condition.
So I couldn't hear.
Yes, none of the microphones are working. Oh, right. So can I just understand, if the front, so the inner door concept, so you will get noise as people go in and out, because you won't be using the sound lobby. Is that correct? Because you're only closing the inner door, and therefore when people go in and out, you will get noise from the music going out onto the street and potentially the residents above. Is that right? Because you're only having the inner, because you're only using the sound lobby from 9 o'clock onwards, is it?
Yeah, from 9 p.m. 9 p.m. on that road.
Michael might be better explained, but the inner doors swing open as people go in and out, so they're essentially closed through that. And the condition is from 9 p.m. If there is a need in terms of music being played earlier or anything like that, that will be up to the venue to manage in terms of the other conditions, in terms of closing the door if needed, if there is sound escape. We don't anticipate that to be a problem, given the works and the levels of music that we know that we're going to operate to. But the condition is the maximum, sort of the requirement to do that. There's nothing to prohibit my client from doing it earlier to deal with that, and we're just able to manage that within the operation.
And can I just be clear, at the moment on the current licence, there's no conditions about the doors at all. When it was all Bar 1 or Polpo, there none of these, all these conditions are new conditions to tighten up things that if the committee were minded to make any changes that were happening that weren't on the licence before.
No, and there also wasn't a sound lobby prior to the works being carried out.
And can I just clarify, because we've got a subsequent condition about the rear doors, can we make it clear that this is about the front doors?
Ms Tricker, should it be front windows? I'm just clarifying.
Sealed shut, aren't they?
Yes, thank you.
Sealed shut.
Okay, and
I think it's
Tricker,
the
you
external
made a
doors and
comment
windows
about
to the front of the premises.
Sorry?
I think if you put the front in front of the premises,
Okay.
that picks it up.
Thank you. I just wanted some clarification about what you're agreeing to when music is being played, or a performance takes place. It's the end part of that condition. What were you suggesting?
Well, our initial suggestion is the second part is not required, but if members are minded to put in a second part, we suggested the internal doors be closed from 8 p.m. in terms of the opening.
So the expectation is you will leave the internal doors potentially open.
So if you've only got the internal doors closed, that would mean the external doors are open when a performance is taking place.
Yes, but as I mentioned earlier, the external doors may be closed. It would be up to, this is sort of the minimum requirement or the maximum requirements as to when this condition must happen. If there's music being played, it might be during short periods of time that the doors may be closed to prevent a noise escape, but it's very much in the management policy to ensure that there's no noise nuisance or noise leaking from the premises.
So are you saying when a performance is taking place, in addition to the fact that the external front doors are closed at 9 p.m, when a performance is taking place, the internal door would close from 8 p.m?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apologies if
And
not
we also
clear.
have condition 19 above that, which supersedes all of these as well, which is very clear that no music is allowed to cause a nuisance to the neighbouring dwellings.
Okay, thank you. Then we go on.
Sorry, Chairman, sorry, Ms Titcombe.
Yep.
Would it just make sense there just to say, and at all times, during the performance of any live entertainment or generation of music? So don't have a time in there at all.
The only issue is that they can currently play recorded music.
It says live music. Any live entertainment.
Yes, that's true. At all times is now being suggested. Ms Tricker, did you have a view?
I've just, Mr Bell, who's in charge of operations, to deal with that. The only comment that he would make is that if there is a performance at, say, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, additional doors need to be closed to deal with that, which may not cause a nuisance because of the levels that are being played at 2 p.m. So again, we would seek, having regard to the earlier condition that we can't cause any nuisance, to leave that up to the premises to manage to ensure that there is no nuisance. It's just that consideration.
So, Councillor Spalding, they're suggesting 8 o'clock and giving them the flexibility earlier in the day. That's what they're suggesting, and it's a matter for you to consider in the determination.
I mean, we don't want to come here and get laden down with so many conditions when we're just improving the licence for the residents and the operation to crystallise certain things. And there is a certain level. We are well aware of our noise responsibilities and the prevention of licensing objectives to deal with that, and they'll operate accordingly.
Could I just understand, what is a performance?
So that would be a singer.
And do they stand up on a stage or a table or something?
They could. There's a small pavilion in terms of the seating, but they could just be on the floor as well.
Okay. And are they always accompanied by background music?
Yes, the backing track for the music that they're singing to, yes.
Just for clarification, I will delete the reference to loud because this is being raised by Miss Lambert. So I do propose that the reference to loud should be removed. Then moving on to condition 25.
Sorry to labour this point and interrupt you again. But I think this is related to the discussion about sound limiters. It just occurs to me, you see, that the recorded music is not regulated, and that could be at any volume if it's not limited, and the performances could be at any volume. I mean, if you had a really loud singer or a group of singers and really loud recorded music, and it could be at 2 o'clock, say, on a Sunday afternoon.
But Malcolm, they're not allowed to make any noise, number 19.
Yeah.
Outside
Exactly.
building. Number 19, I think we're tying ourselves up in knots with this. An amplified sound limiter is a huge bit of kit that nightclubs have.
Yeah.
I mean, if the residents come and complain that, they are being bothered in their flats, they are then in breach of condition 19, full stop. So,
And the other point is that until 11 o'clock at night, music is deregulated in any event.
Yeah. I just wondered why this little bit on the on 24 is on the end anyway. I mean, it's-
It was just a suggestion.
Yeah.
But it's obviously created more issues than had been anticipated. Sorry about that. So then, if we can move on to 25, I just made a few tweaks.
No objection.
Yep. And then on 26, this relates to the dispersal policy. I'd suggest the wording in red, and Ms Tricker, you did say that you would be happy to send a copy of the dispersal policy to the residents' associations.
I did. So the wording that I've suggested for consideration is your wording plus any amendment to this policy shall be forwarded to the licensing authority.
Sorry, any amendment
to this policy shall be forwarded to the licensing authority and the local residents' associations within 7 days of the change.
Okay.
I think my only comment was actually, could we be involved in if there are any substantial changes, or can you go back and say, we actually think the change is a negative change? Is there a way of having a dialogue if it's not appropriate?
I think dialogue is very important, and I think that will come in one of the other conditions about consultations with local residents groups. You can't start running their business for them, I don't think. But I think the dialogue is really important in the residents' meetings, which is going to come up.
Okay. Then there should be no smoking permitted in Bulmer Place at any time by staff or patrons. That's okay. And then this condition 28, in our desire to simplify it, we over-egged it, so I've now changed it, but in light of the comments that were made overnight. So I'm suggesting it now says the rear fire doors shall be kept closed and the real external area in Bulmer Place shall not be used during the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. the following day on Monday to Friday, between the hours of 6:30 p.m. and 10 a.m. the following day on Saturday, and between 12 noon and 7:30 hours the following day on Sunday, except, so obviously on Sunday it goes into Monday morning, that's why I've changed it to 7:30, except for immediate access and egress and in the case of emergency. I'm just wondering whether we need the words, it was in the original wording that had been suggested, but I'm not sure we would need immediate access and egress, would we?
I think this is the point about allowing the staff members who've parked their cars there, which I don't have a problem, but if at the moment that's looks like a coach and horses through the restriction, because you're allowing anybody to go in and out, which is exactly the point that we don't want. So if it's to access a car that is parked there, then that is fine.
I could say by staff.
Well, I don't know how many members of staff they have. I mean, yeah, I'm fine with to access the car parking spaces, the 2 car parking spaces.
Ms. Chick, I need your help on that.
in my view, I think it should be retained as per the wording that you have suggested in terms of the immediate access and egress. That would cover the car parking. There's various other restrictions about staff not being able to smoke in Bulmer Terrace, Bulmer Mews, except Bulmer Place, sorry, to deal with that. And it would also allow the immediate access to put the rubbish in the bins that we spoke about as well. The only comment I'd make, and I know the rubbish is dealt with, and I just want to be very clear and transparent, the rubbish condition is dealt with in proposed condition 39, and I just didn't want any conflict between 28 and 39, so that everyone's aware that we do need access to the rear to put the rubbish in the bins. Subject, of course, I'm happy to amend 39 to 8 p.m. and not 11 p.m.
So 39 should be 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. Is that
Yes.
right? Yeah.
No, 7:30. The service road never opens, and on a Sunday it's
Happy.
not before 10.
Sorry, say that again.
Right, so the service road doesn't open until 7:30, Monday to Saturday, and Sunday is 10 a.m. That's the only day we get a sleep in.
And the one above,
They have a key.
presumably.
But my worry about this caveat is basically the immediate access and egress. Basically, the condition becomes relatively worthless because there is no restriction on who can go in and out or why they can go in and out. So for me, this condition really isn't worth an awful lot when you have that caveat in there. It needs to be clarified or quantified.
Yeah, but the problem is that
This is the
they do
exact
need
path.
access to that area.
But that's our point. Not outside of those hours. Those hours, no. If you need to get into your car, yes. But if you want to go out and get some fresh air, no, you go out the front. That's exactly the point. Because Ivy Lodge, by the way,
That is
actually
agreed.
operates on both, they're double aspect flats. So they hear as much as we do, if not more.
So
But
we can add in, except for immediate access and egress for the car parking spaces.
Correct, that would be helpful.
And the rubbish. But is everyone happy that condition 39 is not in contradiction to 28?
Well, funnily enough, I had read condition 30 to applying to rubbish from the front street. So I had viewed that this is exactly the limit we were going to get for rubbish. We did talk about rubbish earlier. I think Michael commented about...
Till 8 p.m.
And 6:30 on a Saturday.
Saturday, correct.
Preferably even earlier on a Sunday.
Yes, so we'll look
I think
at
what you
those.
can do is
So
you can carve out
any of the conditions on
except as
rubbish.
set out in condition 30.
Any of the conditions on rubbish, we will make sure they tally with condition 28.
Thank you.
Perfect. That's probably the way to do it.
Or alternately, you just say condition 28 doesn't apply to the rubbish condition 30. Yep.
Okay. 29 is about deliveries. So I've suggested alternative wording to say that any deliveries in Bulmer Place shall only take place on Monday to Friday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. and on Saturday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday between 10 p.m. and 12 noon and at no other times. Is that okay?
Agreed that your proposed wording for Bulmer Place and Notting Hill Gate is agreed.
Yes, I wasn't sure whether there would be any deliveries, that's why there was a question mark on that, okay. 30
So
is
just going back to Bulmer Place deliveries, so Ocado can't deliver to residents around the back or anything like that after 8 p.m. at night. I'm just looking at the
There are gates that physically shut
physically shut
access.
on the Bulmer Place.
I think Ivy Lodge residents and those residents at Gate Hill Court who have a car do have a key to open those gates, but no delivery trucks, no.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Number 30, I know there was some discussion about whether the smokers should be 15 and what time smokers should be monitored outside. Ms Tricker, any comments?
No, we would, our view would be for it to be, should it be granted, to remain as is. And we'll leave that to members.
And of course our counter view is coterminous with the tables and chairs at 9:30, 9 on a Sunday, and we leave the committee to determine about the numbers on 15.
Okay. And then 31, That's your
Agreed, yep.
condition, yes. Then in terms of the consumption of food and alcohol in the external area, say for condition 30, the external front forecourt area should be kept clear of all customers from 21:30 on Monday to Saturday and from 9 p.m. on Sundays until 9 a.m. the following day. Is that agreed?
Yes.
Then 33 is your condition. Then the following conditions are conditions that may or may not be appropriate. I'll just deal with the condition that you mentioned, Ms Gardner, that you wanted to add a condition about the smoking policy.
Yes, the wording that I've suggested for consideration I can read out, which is the premises shall, I think you've
Sorry,
got-
could you just go a bit slower? The premises
shall operate a smoking policy
Yep.
which shall be adhered to at all times
Yes.
the premises are operating under the premises licence. Stop.
Yep.
The policy should contain a strategy
Yep.
advising patrons.
I think I've got this. The
You
policy,
do, I believe you do.
Yeah, the policy shall contain a strategy advising patrons who wish to smoke other than when seated in the private forecourt area fronting the premises to be directed to do so immediately outside the premises. A copy of the policy must be served on the licensing authority and local residents association no later than 14 days from the date the premises starts operating. Any amendments to the policy shall be forwarded to the licensing authority and the local residents associations within 7 days of the change. Okay? Fine. So there was an issue raised about the sale of alcohol. I think Councillor Spalding, you raised this on the for the tables and chairs outside, whether there was a suggestion that alcohol can only be supplied ancillary to food, or whether it can only be supplied to people who are seated. Did you have any comments?
I do have comment. No issue in terms of people seated at the premises. We do have objection to must have a table meal with them. The premises has previously operated in the guise of all bar one. They've had tables and chairs out there in terms of with no restrictions. We don't think in terms of the operation of the premises that there'll be any nuisance to deal with that. You could sit down and have a quiet drink with whoever you're with to deal with that. But it's a matter of management of the premises rather than micromanagement in terms of what it is. To impose such a condition is essentially changing the usage of the premises and what the premises. Food will be available at all times, of course. As per the condition, there is a menu, there is the Indian tapas, but we wouldn't like it to be a mandatory condition that must happen. We are still obliged to not cause a nuisance in terms of any patrons seated there, which we'll do in terms of the conditions and also the outside management plan.
Do we understand that customers drinking alcohol must be seated outside? Yeah, good. Yeah.
It was the ancillary to
The food, yeah, got that. Must be seated, yeah.
And in terms of, thank you, in terms of condition 35, you'll see in the middle, there's your liaison with residents associations. Are you going to do you want to contact particular residents, or do you think it's appropriate just for residents associations and ward councillors?
Local residents associations certainly, and if any residents provide their details and say they want to get involved, we can certainly invite them along as a matter of course.
So do you want me to delete it? Because it, obviously when I'm drafting the condition it has to be clear, so I either keep it in or take it out.
I would take it out on the basis that there's an understanding of the objectives here, that if you contact us, Ms Miller, and want to be involved, you are more than welcome to attend.
Yes, certainly. And then in terms of 36 and 37, you said you don't think it's appropriate or proportionate to have these conditions in.
Yes.
Okay. The refuse conditions you're happy with, subject to them being aligned with the previous condition that I've just mentioned, yes?
Yes.
So I think we still leave it with the committee to decide about a noise limiter.
Yes, I've got that you want to have a noise limiter. And then we have another condition, 40, about SIA door supervisors. Any comment on that?
No objection.
Okay. Challenge 25. And then 42 just goes with it. And then the staff training.
No objection.
Okay. And I've made a note that residents want a noise limiter. Just query, do members want a condition there should be no speakers on the first floor at any time?
You've said that. I mean,
There is not any speakers if you wish to impose there's no payment for them.
I think that's all I've got. Now, there was the suggestion about planters. It's up to the members to decide whether they want to require the planters to be put back or taken away.
Could I just say, the kitchen is at the rear, and I don't know whether it's got any windows or what have you, but if you're going to put in a no speakers, I would also ask the kitchen no speakers that's audible in the rear.
there's no worrying in there. Heidi, I mean, Mr. Titcombe, have you?
I finally finished.
Finally,
Thank you very
the
much.
long conditions. No, it's okay. Well, this is what happens when we have an old licence and we're trying to get everything up to date and to current conditions on. So thank you all for your patience for this. I think that was a very, very useful conditions session. So the committee now are going to retire to a closed session. We would have liked to have tried to announce decision today. We're trying to get back into that routine, but because we have actually approaching midday, I think we're probably not going to announce the decision today, but we will announce our decision within 5 working days.
Thank you.
And that will be, and then the full decision will follow sometime after that.
Could I just make one thing that I forgot to point out? That on this photograph, that is the entrance to Ivy Lodge,
Yes.
right next to the EE shop. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I just want to just loop back into our licensing governance. Has anything come up during the course of the hearing? No. And our licensing officers, anything come up in the course of the hearing?
Nothing, Chair.
No. Thank you very much. This session is now closed. Thank you all for your time.